DesignWall, Episode 7, with awesome, technologically advanced graphics. Look at this. It's like picture in picture. I don't even know what the picture is right now. Anyways, I'm going to talk about AC3 today. It's Assassin's Creed, up for Game of the Year for VGAs, probably going to be up for Game of the Year on a whole bunch of other sites. Well deserved, great game. Let's get into it. So, first thing, the kill animations are incredible. There are a lot of them for each different kind. It's each different kind of weapon that there are a lot of them for. Not so much each individual sword has its own kill animation. It's not that. It's more like the swords have them, the tomahawks have them, the giant axes have them, and so forth. So great game, great kill animations. It's always cool, you know. There's also like contextual kill animations. I've been trying to repeat it the rest of the game, but I did it once and it was awesome. I was near like a fence, and I countered him, and Connor like foot planted off the fence, grabbed him, like threw him down to the ground. It looked insane. It was great. If you wonder what I'm looking over, I got my notes. See, I don't have my pictures in front of me right now because I'm advanced and stuff. So I got my notes there, and it's probably gonna be a long one, so I need to read off of them. Next thing I'm going to talk about, something not as cool as the kill animations. It is the trading resources from your homestead. So in the game, you'll get your homestead, which is like your villa from Assassin's Creed 2. And you get to kind of upgrade it, get people who live there, get resources and crafting from them, and all this crazy stuff. But one of the things you get to do there is kind of trade not really with other people. You kind of like sell what you make there. So I got a whole bunch of beaver pelts, and I was going to go sell them all. But the problem was that you can only have like 3 beaver pelts per caravan. Like these big caravans, and just 3 little beaver pelts. Like what, beaver pelt? That big? That big or so, right? It's like, I feel like I could fit a lot more in there. Or like 3 apples. I'm sure I could fit more than 3 apples into this caravan. And it was kind of like, well, this is kind of useless. I'm going to trade 3 at a time, and I bought like 12 of them. So it's going to take me a long time to trade them all off, especially because you can't just go into start menu, pause menu, whatever, and start trading from there. You have to be at these ledger things, or the ledgers or accounting books. When you're there, you can send your caravans off to go trade, but you have to be at those places. So if it comes back and you're not at one of those places, you can't send another one out right away again. Now this does kind of balance the money in this game, as in like I never had like an overabundance of money. I was always spending it on either I wasn't really spending on ammo or anything. I was more spending it on the ship for the naval missions, which I'll get to later. But those cost a lot of money. So if I had way too much money, it'd be way too easy, and I'd have all the upgrades like first try. But not being able to send off the caravan non-stop made it harder to gain all that money, but not being able to send that caravan off non-stop, it didn't feel like I was making a lot of money off of it, so I wasn't constantly looking for a place to send it off every time it came back. I was like, oh, it came back, I gotta go send it off now so I can get another $1,000 faster. No, I was like, oh, it came back, well, I guess next time I run into one of these things, I'll send it off or something, I wasn't really like, gotta get all this money. So it's a good and bad thing. It seemed kind of useless, but it did make the balancing better in the end, I think. Next thing on my notes I can't read from far away. Yes, in this homestead area, you can also craft things. Now, the crafting I found relatively useless, because you'd be like crafting arrows or ammo for your gun, and it's like, well, I can just buy those for extremely low amounts of money, or I can like loot the guys I kill and get the ones I use back. So it's like, why would I craft these when it's just so much easier not to craft them? So the crafting seemed a little bit underdone. Something more could have been done there. Another big thing, which I wasn't really expecting when I went to this game, is the unclimbable rocks. There are large sections of huge rock faces which are unclimbable, and you have to walk all the way around one side, and that doesn't work. Walk all the way around the other side, try and find a narrow path that will lead you past these rocks. And I was like, it's an open world game. Why am I being forced down a narrow path by these huge unscalable rocks? And the developers, I remember the developers saying in videos, being like, oh yeah, the forest, you're going to be able to climb it like it is a city. You're going to be able to use it kind of like a city. They just didn't want a whole bunch of right angle branches in there, right? And they did that fairly well. But the rocks, they were saying, oh, you can climb any, all these natural looking surfaces. You can absolutely climb all those. It's very dynamic. You can climb up these rocks and everything. And one of the demos, they climb up a rock face. But there are very few of those rock faces. Most of them are the giant unscalable ones. The rocks you can climb up are about 10 feet high. And they're like, climb this little rock, it's kind of in your way. So, climbing up the rocks that you could climb looked cool, felt good, but there were so many of those giant, big rocks that you couldn't get past. It was really annoying. This could have very well been because they didn't want, for some reason, they wanted you to go down that path. They didn't want you to be able to, I don't know, maybe walk straight through the entire map and get over these rocks like that. But I feel like the alternative that they chose was worse, and they could have more rocks which you could climb up. Next point is. But yes, okay, so sticking on to the frontier area where you can climb in all the trees, which is like a really big thing in this game. Scaling the trees, running through the trees like that. It looks great. It looks fantastic. But it's not quite as good as running around through the city. And I should say right now, the city is it's almost like better and worse climbing buildings. Worse because it doesn't look as realistic. Connor kind of it's like a little tiny push and he flies up like his entire body length, which is completely unrealistic. He does crazy climbing moves, which he looks so floaty almost. And this is probably because the procedural animation, I think. Procedural animation isn't to a point where it is as good as strict, rigid animations for exact handholds, which is what Assassin's Creed 2 was. But I prefer the procedural animations because this technology is going to go and it's going to be great and I can see the potential in it. And it makes it a lot more open. But it just doesn't look as aesthetically pleasing. I'm completely alright with that though. But the problem is that... No, not the problem. The good thing is that now you can climb pretty much any face no matter what. If you played Assassin's Creed 2, you would notice that some of the buildings were almost like puzzles. I say puzzles because they were kind of implemented to be puzzles, I think, but they were more of inconveniences. But what would happen is that you'd be climbing up, you're like, oh, I can't go up. Oh, I have to move 2 spaces to the right. Now I can go up, right? So it's more inconvenient. Now it just runs straight up, and it's great. It feels a lot better. It's a lot faster, a lot smoother, and it's a lot of fun. And in the city, you can when you're running from rooftop to rooftop, it's almost more like an action movie kind of thing. If you ever watched The Bourne Ultimatum, there's a scene in it where Jason Bourne is running along the rooftop and he jumps into a window and he's kind of going like this, kind of blocking his head, moving his knees up to get through this window. And the camera guy follows him for part of the way. And as it follows him, you kind of get a really cool camera angle. You get that camera angle in Assassin's Creed when you jump really long distances. Building to building, which completely unrealistic jump, but it's a lot smoother because there's not as many of those wires going from building to building. There are some of those, just not nearly as many, and buildings aren't so tightly packed as they were in Venice or something. But I found a lot that you jump like that and it looks really cool. The camera would just do the perfect thing and go behind you, and it looks sweet. Now, the reason why the Frontier didn't do it as well is because in the city you have so many options to kind of you can go on that roof, that way. You can jump over there or whatever. Or you can run up any tree you want. Not any tree, you can run up any building you want when you're on the ground. The Frontier, it almost, some parts of it seemed like there was only one line you could follow on the branch. It looked really cool when you're going along that one line, but you had to follow that one line. There were no other dividing branches to kind of spread out through the forest. There were places like this, and there were places not like this, right? I found both fairly evenly. So maybe I found both because there are a few places where it was kind of very linear, and I just kept running that spot over and over again. I don't know. But I definitely hit the spot a few times, and I was able to branch off a few times. But even the branching off wasn't quite as not quite as good, but quite as noticeable, right? Because the trees you can't climb and the trees you can climb look exactly the same, except for like a branch sticking out. So it's not like you can easily just look at it and know where you can and can't go, right? When in the city, you can easily look at it and know, oh, there's no building there. I can't go over there. Or, hey, look, that's a roof. I know I can run along rooftops, right? It's so much more easily visual to what you can and can't climb in the city than what you can and can't climb in the woods. Because woods, not as many trees are climbable as you think. They have to have the branches on them that you could grab onto and pull yourself up with. Now, I wish that they had more of these branches on the trees and it's had a lot of different levels of climbing. You know, maybe like a lower level where it's pretty close to the ground, then on the same trees, branches up higher where you can run higher. It would look very unrealistic. Maybe not the lower branch and the higher branch. That'd look way too unrealistic. But just having like more branches on these trees. Yes, most of the branches are kind of at 90 degrees. You know, they do bounce a bit. There are the V ones we get go into. But I feel like more 90-degree branches making it look a little less realistic, but funner gameplay. More fluid, faster, and just more dynamic overall instead of these few paths you could follow. So that's what I gotta say about the Frontier, I think, if I check my notes, and that is everything I wrote down about it. Oh yeah, no, I'm not quite done about the Frontier. In the Frontier, if you want to get onto one of these tree lines, or just like up in the trees, you have to start at a specific spot. You can't just run up any tree to get to the branches, even if there are branches above. You have to either go up, you start at the starting point, or the ending point and go either direction. You can't just be like, oh, there's branches up there. I want to get up there. You start around the tree. You do your little run-up animation, then fall back down. You can't just climb any tree. You must start at very specific points. Now, there are a number of these points, but they are like not in the middle of these big, densely tree areas. They're like on the edge where all the branches you can run along are. And I feel like in the city, I could just run up any building I wanted whenever I wanted, and that was just so much cooler. Also, I found there were several trees that you could climb halfway up and couldn't get past. Now, I know there's a bug in the game that even on buildings you climb up and you can't get past, even though there's a hole right there. That's a bug with the procedural animation, I think. And you jump off the tree or jump off the building, go back up, you'll get up that same spot. But there was physically no handholds above these points on these trees. There wasn't even branches above where you could climb to. It was a whole bunch of pegs sticking out of the tree, almost like knots kind of thing. You climb up there, and you'd be kind of hanging there halfway. You'd be like, what do I do now? Is it somewhere I could like run away from like jaguars if they come attack me? But why would I run away from jaguars? It's entirely quick time events to kill them, right? And it's like, they're not dangerous. And, I don't know, maybe, yeah, I think that's the only reason I could think of. But then what would you do when you're up there? You can't fire your gun from that point. You can't fire a bow and arrow. You're just kind of there. You know, maybe if guards are passing, you can run up there, but it's like, that's a horrible hiding spot. It might work in the game, I don't know, but it just seems like a horrible hiding spot. You're just plastered to a tree, not even camouflaged in. So, yeah, that's all I got to say about the Frontier. So, but just to summarize, it is quite fun running through trees and like hunting and trapping the guards in the trees. It's like the rope dart. A lot of fun using that kind of thing.